Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. You can follow The Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS. You can follow me on Twitter at Eli Hershkovich. And you can follow our guests on Twitter as well. The great Chris Fallica, the Bear, joining us at Chris Fallica on Twitter, now with Fox Sports. And Ryan Dickey at Firehouse Racing on Twitter, content supervisor over at Circa Sports. He'll be over at the new Illinois sportsbook for Circa once that hopefully opens up close to football season. But want to start with you, Chris. How's everything going at Fox? And you're getting ready for your favorite time of the year.
Well, yeah, so far so good. It's been mainly doing a lot of writing so far, and it's actually worked out well. Being that the USFL is on Fox, I've been doing weekly columns on the USFL, and it's actually gone very well so far. So yeah, we got some columns. We'll have Belmont Stakes on June 10th. We'll be on the air for that. Then I'll have Women's World Cup in Australia in July and August, and then college football season will be here. So certainly enjoying a little bit of downtime that I have right now, because late summer and fall will certainly be very busy.
Yeah, one of the best college football, sports betting, sports analysts out there. Chris Fallica definitely deserves a nice little break here before we get going into football season. But Ryan, I want to introduce you to our audience as well, working at Circa Sports. And some of our listeners and viewers may be familiar with Circa from Vegas, obviously, and the football contests out on the West Coast. But what are you doing for the sportsbook soon to come in Illinois?
Well, when we open up, I will be providing content. I'll be basically producing the daily odds sheets, and when we get into football, hopefully we can do some parlay cards, and then putting all the sports on the screens, things like that. But right now, I'm just here in a kind of a overseeing role, just kind of making sure that we're going to be ready to go when we're ready to go. And that's all I can say about that.
Totally get it. Let's get into the main event here, the 149th edition of the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby. And want to start off with your guys' horse racing betting process overall. Obviously, our listeners and viewers are familiar with you, Chris, but Ryan, a very established horse racing bettor himself. Chris, to kick it off, what goes into your strategy, whether it's for the Kentucky Derby or just in general when you're betting on horses?
The first thing I'll try and do when handicapping a race is try to establish a class level for each horse in the race. Obviously, in the Kentucky Derby, it's a little bit more difficult because all the horses have earned their way into the race, but you can still find differences in what I think is the class level from certain horses within the field, certain horses being better than others. And then the next thing I'll do is try and figure out the pace of the race. Do I anticipate a slow pace up front? Do I anticipate a fast pace up front? Is it going to set up for a closer? Horses on the lead going to be more apt to maybe hold on? So those are the first couple of things that I do when handicapping a race. And of course, you need to follow the racing throughout the day. Is the course playing friendly to front runners? Is the rail good, or outside positions good? So there are a lot of things that happen throughout the day, not necessarily seen on the past performances, that can factor in the races. But I like to consider myself mainly a class handicapper and try and figure out class level within the horses.
Ryan, what about you?
I've had to explain my style before, and it's kind of a cross between pace handicapping and a consensus handicapper. So what I do is, first of all, I look at what the pace could be in the race. And then after I've got a good idea of how I think it's going to go, I then start charting some handicappers, like whether they're the track handicappers or whether they're known on Twitter or whatever. I start to chart where they're going in each one of these races. And since it's a parimutuel game, it's a parimutuel betting game, I'm betting against them. So my goal in figuring out where everyone is going to go, where they're going to go, is I want to zig when they're going to zag. So a little bit of pace handicapping and a little bit of consensus handicapping for me.
Yeah, Ryan and I are getting along great because we have a similar philosophy as well. I didn't know you were going to go there, but yeah, that's the one thing that I think horse bettors who are just stumbling into the Kentucky Derby or the Triple Crown for the first time is that what the odds that you see on the daily racing form or the sheets or wherever you see are not necessarily the odds you're going to get. It is a pari-mutuel pool, and just to throw a horse out there like Two Phils, he's a horse that if you look around, he's like the trendy upset horse right now. And he's 15-1 in the morning line. It doesn't mean you're going to get 15-1 on the horse. You're probably going to get closer to 10-1. So yeah, I'm with Ryan. I like to be a little bit of a contrarian bettor as well when it comes to the horses.
Of course. And let's dive into the horses specifically in just a moment, but I want to kind of backtrack and take a look back at some of the more recent Kentucky Derbies, or maybe even beyond that. Chris, do you have a Kentucky Derby that stands out for you, whether it was maybe a bad beat or a ticket that cashed that stands out in your memory?
Okay. 2019 with Country House was an all-time score for me. Obviously, he didn't cross the line first, but the DQ of Maximum Security put me in the winner's circle, and I had the exact, and I had the try, and I had the pick four that went into that race as well. So in the midst of a lot of booing and jeering and disappointment and hush over the crowd when Maximum Security got taken down in 2019, myself and the group that I was with, we were hamming it up pretty loud in the clubhouse area there when they decided to put Country House's number up.
What about you, Ryan?
Well, first of all, I remember that Kentucky Derby pretty well. I was sitting in a shack in the parking lot of Keeneland. I was writing tickets at the time, and it was with the drive-up window, and there was still so many cars waiting. And when the DQ went, I heard a bunch of cars honking, and you could hear the people inside Keeneland screaming. So I fondly remember that one. But last year's Kentucky Derby with Rich Strike winning at 80, almost 81-1. And nobody had picked him. He was also eligible. He got in at the very last minute. I think it was like 10 minutes before he was going to be eliminated from the race. I think that's going to have an impact on this year's race because I think there's a lot of long shots that really have probably not a chance to win that are going to be bet and over bet, thereby diluting their value. So I think last year's Kentucky Derby is going to kind of spill over into this one for two ways. And not only that, but I think that the jockeys that are running in this race for the first time, they want to be Sonny Leon. They want to be the guy who wins the Kentucky Derby because he had a good ride.
For sure, and perfect segue. Thanks for doing that, Ryan. So if you look back at the two of the three biggest Derby long shots that came over the last four races, including Rich Strike, like you mentioned, at 80-1. So generally speaking, whether it's for this race, and it seems like you guys are going to be on the same page with what Ryan just said, but are you excluding more of the deeper long shots from this pool?
I am.
Yeah, I think what Ryan said is 100% true, that there are going to be people out there who, the Kentucky Derby attracts casual bettors. It attracts husbands, wives, girlfriends, brothers, sisters. Like, everybody wants to have a bet on the Kentucky Derby, and they see Rich Strike being a flukish winner at 80-something-1 on a horse that you couldn't make a case for on the form, but they're going to bet the long shots, and maybe that means that you're going to get a better price on a horse like Tappet Trice or Angel Empire, someone like that, because the bottom feeders of the field are going to be a little bit short in the way the pari-mutuel pool is going to balance out, is you might get a better price on horses that have a legit chance to win. But yeah, there are horses like Jace's Road and Continuar and Sun Thunder, horses that have absolutely no shot, but because people are going to see that the 30, 40, 50-1 in the morning line, they're going to get bet. But yeah, I'm going to be excluding quite a bit of those horses.
And I guess kind of on a similar tangent, it's not necessarily tangential because it's different from a pricing standpoint when you think about the general notion that, and it's different a little bit now than it was just because of legalization across the country, but there was the belief that with a handle as big as the Super Bowl, that public bettors could move a number, whether it be the total or the spread. And maybe we could agree to disagree on that front. with the Super Bowl specifically, but it sounds like you guys both agree, Chris, that it is a similar notion, or just a notion in general with the Kentucky Derby, that because you have your casual bettors wagering on a race like this, that you can get better value at some of the maybe the lesser long shots that you were bringing up.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, you can certainly the casual bettors will come in on these big racing days and flood the pool because they're playing their favorite number, or they're playing their favorite color, or they're playing whatever the reason, and they're just betting on something that has a very unlikely chance of happening. Hey, sometimes it happened last year. It may happen again, but I will be alongside Ryan here in saying that it's probably not going to happen again.
And Ryan, I want to ask you, and you brought up that you were a ticket guy going back to 4 or 5 years ago. So just kind of giving a little background about yourself too. You didn't really do it earlier. What's your path in the industry? Because there's so many different routes that you hear from industry guys that were ticket writers at first. So how did you go about your industry path as a sportsbook employee?
Well, my path has been nothing short of a roller coaster. I've been all over the place. I was actually a firefighter and paramedic for 17 years in Michigan. Prior to that, I worked in Las Vegas. I was a ticket writer for one day at the Las Vegas club, and I was promoted the next day to supervisor.
You did a great job.
It was one of those right place at the right time things. So I was a ticket writer for one day, and then I became a supervisor at the Las Vegas club. And then I moved back to Ohio and then Michigan. And then when I left firefighting, I went to Kentucky to be into the the horse racing industry. And it's one of those things where I took a chance. I was like, this is what I want to do. And I failed. I had like a big scheme plan that I was going to do something in horse racing, and it didn't work. So I moved back to Las Vegas. My family's there. And then I ended up working at Circa, which sits right on the same exact spot as the Las Vegas club did. In fact, the office that I worked in at Circa was exactly in the same spot as the office that I had at Las Vegas club. So I've been a ticket writer for sports for one day. I was a ticket writer for horse racing at a couple of different places, including Keeneland. And then I've been with Circa almost since they opened. They opened in October of 2020. I started in December. So I'm very happy where I am right now. And I'm excited every day.
Yeah, and I know Chris has been out to Vegas quite a few times and has gotten some cool behind the scenes looks at Circa. All of us know Jeff Benson. I think you have a weekly meeting with Jeff, Ryan, and very, very well spoken on Twitter, to say the least. But want to get back to the race here, and both of you mentioned the morning lines being released on Monday. With that, and it's been well known that Forte is the favorite at 3-1, and I think he was priced at plus 200, depending on the shop leading up to the Kentucky Derby. But for the morning line specifically, he's set at 3-1. So for Forte in particular, how are you guys approaching him, whether it be straight wagers? Doesn't seem like you guys are going to be having a position on him, but maybe an exotic, whatever it may be. I know you guys don't have those tickets ready to go just yet, but generally speaking with Forte, what's your strategy? Chris, you first.
I haven't fully handicapped the race and laid out how I'm going to bet it, but I haven't heard many people give Forte a chance just yet. My inclination is that his bloodlines do not scream mile and a quarter violence. Is primarily a sprint type winner, and his offspring have been more of a 7 furlong type horse. But hey, he's closed well at Gulfstream, the mile and an eighth distance. So can he carry that another furlong remains to be seen. I don't know exactly what he's beaten at Gulfstream. I mean, Mage is an up and coming horse, but Cyclone Mistress is a speed and fade type. And yes, he ran huge in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile that day, and whatever happened to the favorites in that race happened. But he did win the race. He's got a couple of wins in Kentucky. He hasn't raced at Churchill yet. He's got the right running style for a Derby horse. that I like to wager on. Someone coming from off the pace and let the speed horses back up. So that could be a blessing, or it could be a curse this year if the pace isn't as fast as it might be led on to believe. So my view on Forte is I think he can win, but he's not someone I am pressing a lot of tickets on to win. If he beats me, I'll be like, okay, the favorite one. I knew he could win, but again, at 7-2 or whatever he's going to go off at, I think that's a little short to be betting on a horse that I think has distance limitations.
How about you, Ron?
I agree with Chris. I think that any wagers that I have on him obviously will be price dependent. I'll be keeping an eye all day long on what the current Derby odds are. The cool thing about the Kentucky Derby is most pari-mutuel races you can only bet the day of. The Kentucky Derby you can start the day before. A lot of people bet early. I'm going to be keeping an eye on his odds. Do I think he can win? Yeah, I think he can win. Do I think his chances are commensurate with his odds? I don't know. I think that's one of those things that I'm going to have to keep an eye on. Every year I play a pick four to where I'm alive to all in the Derby. And the only time I've ever actually been alive to the Derby was when California Chrome won, and it didn't pay so much. So hopefully, if I'm alive to a pick four and there's big numbers all around, I'll be rooting against him. But when it comes time for the race, and I only want to bet on the race, if he's 7-2, and I don't see a lot of reasons not to take the 7-2, then I will probably go ahead and fire on. But it all depends on what his price is going to be and what my position is for the race as far as horizontal bets.
So Ryan, among some of the other favorites, whether it be Tapit Trice or Angel Empire, I think Tapit Trice is around 5-1 on the morning line, and Angel Empire right around 8-1. Are those horses you're looking at, or any others among the favorites that our listeners, viewers should pay attention to?
I like Tapit Trice. I didn't think I was going to like Tapit Trice, which is weird because when I finally took my deep dive into it, I like his late pace ratings. His late pace ratings are among the best in the field. And when I look at the pace of this race, I see a jumbled mess. And I want to gravitate towards a horse who can be somewhere in the front. You don't want to get caught in the Derby. You don't want to get caught early behind traffic. That's a killer. So this is one who doesn't have to be up front, but I think he can work out a trip to where he can be in the mix for at the end. And with his late drive, I think he has a chance. And if someone said you have to pick one horse to bet in the Derby, Tapit Trice would be that for me.
Chris, are you in agreement?
I do like Tapit Trice. I think he and Verifying were so much the best in that bluegrass. Now, there was nothing behind them, but the speed figures speak for themselves in that race. And I prefer Tapit Trice to Verifying simply because of, I think, the post positions as well, with Verifying being down in post 2. You're probably going to get stuck down in there, and being pressured around for a mile and a quarter isn't a good thing. And I think with Tapit Trice being able to come from just a little bit off the pace from a stalking trip, like Ryan said, I think Tapit Trice is someone that you definitely need to look out for. I know you mentioned, Ryan, how you don't like the closers and betting closers from off the pace and being kind of subjected to the mercy of trip. But if I had to bet one horse, it's going to be Skinner. He's a horse that just missed to practical move out in the Santa Anita Derby. It was his second start against winners. He ran a great race, and I like the jockey move from Victor Espinosa. It's crazy to say I like the jockey move from Victor Espinosa to Juan Hernandez, but Hernandez is an up-and-coming guy based on the West Coast, and I think Skinner, of all the horses in this field, I've got very little concern about Skinner's ability to get a mile and a quarter here. Now, again, maybe the pace doesn't materialize, but this is a horse that clearly has improved from 2 to 3. And you have John Sheriffs, who's won the Kentucky Derby with Giacomo and what was another massive upset. And I think this is a horse that could be coming from off the pace and really make a run at the front runners late.
Well, don't speak too soon because I know Ryan has some positive words to say about Skinner as well.
So he's my long shot choice.
That's okay.
For all of the same reasons that you said, like exactly the same reasons that you said. I don't value closers in a big race like this, but this one is a little bit different, and I really, really, truly hope that he's overlooked at the betting windows, because I would love nothing more than to get a 18-1, 20-1, 24-1 winner with him on top. And if I can just play an exacta with Skinner overall, I know that I'm going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, and even the other way around too, all over Skinner.
Yep.
If he doesn't
Yep.
get there for another 18, 19 bucks, I mean that's certainly worth a play as well.
Yeah, I did that with Commanding Curve, whatever year that was. But when you talk about
46-1,
Giacomo, the first Kentucky Derby I ever saw in person was in 2005, and Giacomo won it. What was it, 50-1 or no?
something like that.
Something like that.
Here's a funny story about 2005. I loved the Fleet Alex, and I thought a Fleet Alex was the best horse and was going to win. So I played a Fleet Alex all in a try, a Fleet Alex all in a try. What didn't I do? All a Fleet Alex, and you had Giacomo closing argument who was like 70-1, and then a Fleet Alex in third, and the try was just massive. So
nuts.
Don't be afraid to hit that all button in a race like this.
Did you get it back in the Preakness?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
very much so. Yeah, that was a little scare there with Scrappy T nearly send him to the ground. But yes, I did get it back in the Preakness and the Belmont.
He took a knee. He took a knee at the beginning of the race and still won.
Last question for you guys. And we've kind of touched on this throughout in terms of at least the long shots from the get-go that may be overvalued a little bit. But is there a horse based on post position or something along those lines where you guys, maybe not fading said horse, but will definitely look to stay away, whether it be middle tier odds or among one of the favorites? Chris, start with you.
Can I go the other way with it? I mentioned Verifying, I think already, as someone who I think just because of the post is kind of up against it. I'm going to go the other way and say a horse that I would have bet, but now don't think I can, is Hit Show. I mean, the horse has been favored in every one of his career starts. He's got a good running style where he's kind of the stalker closer type race. He probably was the best in the wood when Lord Miles got up and beat him at 50-1 or whatever he was. But at the same time, horses that are down on the inside don't typically do well. Now, the question you need to ask yourself is it worth it betting this horse at 30-1 or so with the new starting gate? Just maybe the new starting gate, which was brought in a couple of years ago, maybe that isn't as much as an end-all to a horse's chances from the rail, and maybe Verifying, the other Cox horse, goes to the front and Hit Show can kind of work himself out a little bit. So I think Hit Show is an interesting argument in terms of just paying attention to the post position and actually maybe handicapping the race, where normally I would say rail, no shot, but rail, 30-1 or so on a horse that I think if he doesn't draw the rail might be 15-1 or so. That might be something I still consider.
Ryan, if you want to go along the same lines or however you want to take it.
I spent probably 5-6 hours trying to handicap the pace yesterday, and I just couldn't come up with anything. And I think the draw was relatively fair. It does mean Verifying has to fire. I mean, he's got to go out. That's the way I see it. Hit Show, I mean, good luck. I just don't have any. I look at the entries, and there's just nobody that just jumps out at me and says, "Oh, this horse got a bad draw," or "This horse got a great draw." I think it was relatively fair.
And Chris, I want to ask you a non-Kentucky Derby question, because I know a lot of our audience definitely misses hearing you on the Daily Wager and hearing your sports betting takes, not just for the Kentucky Derby. And I also know you're a big Jets fan. And in the last week, the Jets got some quarterback name Aaron Rodgers. So I think the win total is going to be around 9.5 if it's not set there already. The Super Bowl odds, as Ryan knows, out at circa. I think that it's actually the high point at circa at 16-1, 14-1 pretty much everywhere else. So what's your viewpoint on an aging Rodgers and a very good Jets defense and gangrene overall?
The Jets needed a quarterback. I mean, that was an absolute given. You could not move forward with Zach Wilson this year. And I think the hope for the Jets organization is that maybe 2 years sitting behind Aaron Rodgers will cure the Zach Wilson's woes. I'm not a believer that it will, but it's clear that Rodgers makes that offense better. It's clear that the coordinator change makes the offense better. It's clear that some of the people that brought in the offensive line makes the offense better. My concern is, are you going to get that same level performance from the defense as you did last year? So, hey, look, I thought there were two things in sports that I was never going to see. One was Miami basketball in the Final Four, and the other is the Jets in the Super Bowl. So I knocked one of those two things out in March, so maybe we can knock another one out this fall. But unfortunately, it seems like with all the scrutiny and being under the microscope, the Jets are set up to fail because of now all these expectations with an all-time great quarterback and an opportunity to maybe make a deep playoff run.
All right, I like it. And I'll spare you the college football win totals question, of course, that you would get. Or is there something?
I don't have a win total for you, but I did play Oklahoma at 70-1 to win the national title. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I think Oklahoma is going to win the national title, but if you look at that conference, it's the most volatile conference in terms of coin flip results. You had TCU go from 5-7 to the national title game this year. You had Kansas State win the league. You can make runs in that league, and especially with a team that they showed their young backs in the bowl game against Florida State, who everyone thinks is going to be a top 5 team, 10 team at the start of the year. You get Dylan Gabriel back. Jeff Lebby stays as coordinator. They were in every game out with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback last year. The Texas game and the TCU game where Gabriel didn't play and got hurt in the TCU game were the only ones that they were blown out. And if you look at their schedule, they don't get TCU, they don't get Kansas State, two teams that are thorns in their side historically. So the winner if Oklahoma wins the Big 12, they're going to be in the playoff. So I figured if I can get 70-1 on a team to win the national championship, where if they win the conference, they're in it, I put myself in a pretty good position to play around come semifinal time if that happens.
Yeah, it sounds like a good future strategy for sure. And Ryan, I don't know if you dabble in college football. I'm sure, like everybody, and everybody wants to be the sharp NFL bettor out there. I'm sure you bet your fair share of NFL too, whether you post about it or not. But is there any future, generally speaking, how, again, kind of similar to how I phrased it to you before, however you want to take it, any sport outside of the Kentucky Derby that you're eyeing, whether it be baseball, NBA playoffs, whatever it may be?
I'm seriously considering dabbling more in college football futures, because with the expanded playoffs, you can enhance your position later more than you've been able to before. So I might actually throw a little coin on Oklahoma. But I think that with more playoff games in the future, I think that if you have a team that's 50-1 or 60-1 and you make it to the second round, then you can hedge off a lot. So I think your futures are going to have more bang for your buck.
Hey, I got a question for you, Ryan. I wasn't
great.
sure if you're going to post any props or anything with the Derby, but and I don't know if it's something you've looked at or maybe you'd want to look at. Like, what would you consider throwing a Brad Cox versus the field, or will Will Cox win versus the field, or Will Cox or Pletcher win versus the field? Because you got Cox with 4, you got Pletcher with 3, so like you're getting 7 horses to getting more than a third of the field to win. Is that a prop that you guys think would get some play?
I think so, but I'm not the decision maker or anything like that. But I do like those kind of props. I think that the people that are in my circles, the people that I know that handicap horse racing, I think they would absolutely love it. We need more horse racing betting, not less horse racing betting, but that's for people above my pay grade to decide. But I would absolutely love to be able to fire at things like that.
Sounds like something Chris would be interested in betting.
Absolutely. Something like that with the yes no, because Circa throws out yes nos on so many things, and they're the only place that does, which is great. Head-to-head matchups with horses are always great, and that's something within the Derby as well. Like, maybe it helps you as a bettor, where maybe you don't necessarily think a horse is going to win, but at the same time you like horse A more than you do horse B, and they're matched up in a head-to-head, and you don't got to worry about the rest of the field. You just got to worry about beating one horse. So I love those types of bets.
Okay, I know that we're going to have head-to-head matchups, but we'll also have group matchups. But,
Perfect.
That's in Nevada.
Well,
I
love
know.
it. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Beat the Closing Number, and two of the best to have on to talk Derby. Chris Fallica at Chris Fallica on Twitter, now with Fox Sports, one of the best sports betting analysts around, and Ryan Dickey at Firehouse Racing, a content supervisor at Circa. And as you could hear, is very, very knowledgeable about this Derby field and horse racing in general when it comes to betting. So much fun having you guys on. Really appreciate the time. As always, Chris, you know I've been bugging you for a long time, Ryan. This will be one of the first of many times I bug you to come on the podcast. So thank you both very much for joining us today, and always appreciate it.
You got it.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Remember to hit the thumbs up and give the video a nice little review on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And you'll get notifications whenever the Lines releases a new sports betting video on any market, including the Kentucky Derby. That's going to do it for this edition of Beat the Closing Number. The Lines is on Twitter at TheLinesUS. And for more promos for the Kentucky Derby, head over to thelines.com for FanDuel Racing. So long, everybody.